Wig challenge at school. I became the most feminine boy. It started as a stupid dare, one that none of us thought would matter beyond a few laughs during lunch. I remember sitting at our usual cafeteria table, surrounded by my friends, when Jamie tossed his soda can and said, "All right, new challenge. Whoever loses the next round of trivia wears a wig and makeup to school tomorrow." Everyone laughed, except me. I'd already lost 2 rounds before, and my luck wasn't improving. I tried to joke my way out of it, but when I missed the final question, something about movie awards, they all cheered, and I knew I was trapped. "Come on, Ryan, it's just for one day," Jamie said, grinning. I laughed too, pretending it didn't bother me, but deep down, I felt a chill. Something about the idea unsettled me more than it should have. That night, my sister Ava heard me mumbling about the dare while I rummaged through the closet looking for anything that could pass as a wig. She leaned on the doorframe, her expression half amused, half curious. "You know, I could actually help," she said. I froze. Ava was older, stylish, and never missed a chance to tease me, but there was a glint of something in her eyes, almost excitement. "Help? You mean embarrass me?" I asked. She crossed her arms. "No. If you're going to do it properly. You'll just make it worse if you look halfway." I sighed but agreed, figuring she'd hand me some old wig and laugh. But instead, she walked into her room and came back with a blonde shoulder-length wig that looked surprisingly natural. "You're going to wear this," she said, then added with a smirk, "and maybe a bit of makeup too. I'll make you look better than anyone expects." The next morning, I sat in front of her mirror as she worked. I thought she'd make it ridiculous, but instead, she took it seriously. Her hands were careful, her eyes focused. Foundation, blush, a little eyeliner. She explained what each thing did, like an artist describing her craft. Then she placed the wig on my head, adjusted it carefully, and stepped back. "Don't look yet," she said, and pulled me to the light. When I finally looked, I barely recognized myself. I didn't look like a joke. I looked soft. My jawline seemed gentler, my eyes brighter. I felt something strange, confusion mixed with curiosity. Ava noticed. "Wow, you actually pull this off," she whispered. I didn't know how to respond. My throat felt dry. I walked into school with my hood up, hoping to avoid attention. But by first period, the news had already spread. "Ryan's doing the wig challenge," people whispered. I expected laughter, mockery, something sharp and cruel, but when I finally took off my hood, the room went quiet. Then someone said, "Wait, that's actually good." Another voice agreed. "You look kinda, no offense, pretty." I didn't know whether to laugh or hide. Even my teacher blinked twice before starting class like nothing happened. By lunchtime, people I barely talked to started asking to take selfies with me. It wasn't mean-spirited, they genuinely seemed impressed. Some of the girls even complimented my hair, asking where I got the wig. Jamie, the one who made the dare, just stared and shook his head. "Okay, fine, you win the challenge. You made it look too real." But I couldn't shake the strange feeling in my chest. Every time I caught my reflection in the glass, I saw something both unfamiliar and weirdly honest. It wasn't that I wanted to be someone else, it was that, for once, I wasn't hiding anything. That evening, I got home, exhausted but strangely calm. Ava was waiting in the living room, smirking again. "So, how was it?" she asked. I sat beside her and said, "Nobody laughed." She raised an eyebrow. "Of course they didn't. I told you I'd make you look good." But I hesitated before continuing. "No, I mean, it didn't feel bad. It felt right, somehow." She looked at me for a long time, her teasing expression fading into something softer. "You know," she said quietly, "when I was younger, I used to dress differently too. Just to see how it felt. Sometimes what starts as a game teaches you who you really are." I thought about that all night. The next day, I expected everything to go back to normal. But when I walked into school as regular old Ryan again, hoodie, jeans, messy hair, it felt strange. People looked at me differently. A few said hi, others smiled knowingly, but I felt out of place in my own skin. During art class, my friend Emily leaned over and said, "Honestly, you looked confident yesterday. Like, really confident." That word stuck with me. Confident. I hadn't felt confident in a long time. Not as Ryan, not even as the person I thought I was supposed to be. Over the next week, I couldn't stop thinking about the challenge. Late at night, I'd find myself looking at that wig on my desk, wondering why it still called to me. One evening, curiosity won. I locked my door, sat in front of the mirror, and put it on again. The reflection hit me like a wave of déjà vu. My heartbeat quickened, but this time I didn't look away. I adjusted it carefully, remembering what Ava taught me about blending the edges, and brushed it out until it framed my face perfectly. Then I whispered to myself, "Who are you?" And for the first time, the silence that followed didn't scare me. It became a quiet habit. Every few nights, I'd experiment a little more. A different outfit, a different expression, a different side of myself. I didn't tell anyone, not even Ava, but something inside me felt lighter. At school, I started speaking up more, participating, laughing freely. People noticed the change, though they didn't know the reason. Emily even said one day, "Whatever's going on, it's good for you. You seem brighter." But one afternoon, things almost fell apart. During a group project at my house, Emily went to get something from the kitchen and walked right past my room. I didn't realize I'd left the wig on the chair. When she came back, she hesitated and said quietly, "Hey, is that from the challenge?" My heart dropped. I could have lied, said it was just leftover from the dare, but the words didn't come. Instead, I nodded slowly. "Yeah," I said, my voice trembling, "I sometimes just try it on." There was silence, heavy and long. Then Emily smiled. "That's okay," she said softly. "It looked good on you. You don't have to explain." That night, I sat under the stars and thought about what she said. It wasn't about pretending anymore. The wig had started as a dare, but it became a mirror. Every time I wore it, I didn't feel like I was hiding. I felt like I was being seen. The next week, there was a charity event at school, a costume day to raise funds. Everyone was supposed to dress creatively. I hesitated, but eventually, I went to Ava and asked, "Do you still have that outfit from last time?" She grinned knowingly. "I thought you'd ask." When I walked into school that morning, the room fell silent again. But this time, it wasn't from surprise, it was admiration. People clapped, cheered, even complimented how confident I looked. It wasn't about looking like someone else. It was about owning who I was. For the first time, I smiled without fear. Even Jamie came up to me and said, "Man, I gotta admit, you pulled it off better than anyone here." And I laughed, not awkwardly, but genuinely. The funny thing is, after that day, people didn't tease or question me. They just accepted it. I became that guy who once won the wig challenge, but it meant more than that to me. It was the day I stopped caring so much about fitting in and started caring about feeling real. Sometimes, late at night, I still think about that moment in front of the mirror, the first time I saw that reflection and didn't flinch. It wasn't about becoming someone new. It was about realizing there had always been more to me than I allowed myself to see. Now, when people ask about the wig challenge, I just smile and say, "Yeah, that was me." They laugh, they remember it as some fun school story. But to me, it was something deeper. It was the day I learned that identity isn't a dare you win or lose. It's a journey you slowly walk into, one reflection at a time. And maybe, just maybe, that reflection isn't pretending, it's finally showing the person you were meant to be all along. The days after the charity event felt different, though school itself didn't change much. People still joked around, still played pranks, but there was this quiet respect now, almost a curiosity about me. I noticed subtle shifts in how teachers treated me, how classmates greeted me, how strangers' eyes lingered just a fraction longer in the hall. It wasn't vanity, it was awareness. I had stepped into a version of myself that I hadn't even known existed, and it felt like I was walking taller without trying. A few weeks later, our school announced the talent show. Everyone scrambled to sign up, some for actual skills, others for comedic relief. I didn't think I had anything to show until Ava suggested I do a little performance with the wig and a creative outfit. At first, I laughed. "You want me to, what? Dance in the wig?" She shrugged. "Do something that makes you feel alive." People will love it if it's real. I hesitated, nervous, but something inside me, this new voice of confidence, said yes. I signed up. The night of the talent show was nerve-wracking. Backstage, I paced in the dim light, wig carefully set, outfit pressed and styled. I overheard other students whispering, curious about what I'd chosen. My hands shook slightly, and I wondered if I was making a huge mistake. Then Ava squeezed my shoulder and whispered, "It's just you up there. Don't think about the rest." I nodded, taking a deep breath, and when my name was called, I stepped into the spotlight. The first few seconds were terrifying. Hundreds of eyes on me, all focused, and I felt that old fear bubble up. But then I remembered something, how I felt the first day I wore the wig, alone in front of my mirror, seeing myself for who I could be. That memory steadied me. I moved with a confidence I didn't know I had, dancing, smiling, letting the wig shift naturally as if it had always been part of me. The audience clapped along, some cheering, some genuinely impressed, and I realized I was enjoying myself in a way I never had before. By the end, the applause was thunderous. I took a bow, heart racing, a smile I couldn't hide plastered across my face. After the show, people came up to me, friends, classmates, even teachers, praising me, asking how I managed to look so composed, so natural. Emily hugged me and whispered, "I knew you could do it. I just didn't know how amazing it would look." Jamie came last, muttering, "Okay, fine. I admit it. You killed it." It wasn't about the wig anymore. It was about presence, courage, and showing something real to the world. That night, alone in my room, I carefully took off the wig and laid it on my desk. I stared at my reflection in the mirror, the familiar face, the same eyes that had once been nervous, uncertain, trying to hide. But now I saw something new, a boy who had embraced change, who had walked through fear, and who had discovered that courage sometimes comes disguised as something as simple as a wig. I realized I didn't need it to be myself anymore, it had simply taught me how to see myself clearly. Weeks turned into months, and though the wig challenge faded into a funny story told at lunch, the lessons stayed. I experimented less with costumes and more with who I was in real life, more confident, more expressive, more willing to take risks, and more accepting of the unexpected sides of myself. Ava noticed the change, sometimes teasing me, sometimes quietly proud, and I learned that support often comes from those who push us to see beyond our limits. By the end of the school year, I wasn't just Ryan, the boy who lost a dare. I was Ryan, the boy who discovered he could face the world as he was, who learned that identity isn't about labels or appearances, it's about honesty, courage, and the willingness to explore who you truly are. And every now and then, I glance at that wig on the shelf and smile, remembering the day a silly dare became a mirror, reflecting more than I ever expected, and teaching me that transformation isn't about changing yourself for others, it's about daring to see yourself, fully and without fear, at last. From that day on, I carried that lesson quietly but firmly. Courage isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a wig, a mirror, and the courage to face your own reflection. And in the process, I became the most feminine boy in school, not because of the hair or makeup, but because I learned how to embrace all parts of myself with honesty, confidence, and a little bit of wonder. That was my transformation, my secret, and my gift, and it began with a dare, a wig, and a willingness to see myself differently than anyone else ever had. After that year, everything at school felt different, even the small things. People still joked and laughed, but there was a new layer to those interactions, a quiet curiosity, a subtle respect. I wasn't the weird boy who wore a wig anymore. I was Ryan, the boy who had dared to try, who had faced himself and come out stronger. It was strange at first, noticing the shift, but it was comforting. It felt like finally breathing after holding my breath for too long. One afternoon, during English class, our teacher asked us to pair up for a creative writing assignment. Emily was next to me, and we started brainstorming ideas. I noticed she looked at me differently now, not with amusement or pity, but with genuine interest. "You've got a good sense of style and confidence," she said casually. I laughed nervously. "Style? I just wore a wig once." She shook her head. "It's more than that. You've got presence." Those words echoed in my mind long after class ended. Presence. Confidence. I realized those weren't things I had magically gained, they had been there all along, waiting for me to find them. Over the summer, I continued experimenting quietly. I didn't wear the wig to school anymore, but at home, I tried new hairstyles, outfits, and even practiced different expressions in the mirror. Each small experiment taught me something new: how posture affects confidence, how a simple smile can change the way people respond, how being comfortable with yourself radiates outward. It wasn't about being feminine or masculine anymore, it was about being genuine, being seen, and being unafraid. When the new school year started, I noticed something amazing. Students who had once ignored me or whispered behind my back now greeted me warmly, sought my input, or included me in conversations. Teachers treated me differently too, not in a way that singled me out, but with recognition of the growth and maturity I hadn't even realized I had developed. My friends joked about the old wig challenge, but it was no longer embarrassing. It was a badge of experience, a story of courage and discovery. One day, Ava came by my room unannounced, holding a small box. "I found this in my closet," she said, handing it to me. Inside was the original wig from the challenge. "I thought you might want to keep it. Not as a costume, but as a reminder." I smiled, feeling a wave of gratitude. "It's more than that," I said softly. "It's the day I started seeing myself clearly." She nodded, her eyes soft. "Exactly." That night, I put the wig on one last time, just to feel the memory. I looked in the mirror and laughed quietly. I didn't see a different person anymore. I saw Ryan, complex, brave, curious, and whole. The wig wasn't what defined me, it was the courage it inspired. I ran my fingers through the synthetic strands, then carefully removed it, placing it back in the box. It wasn't a farewell, it was acknowledgement. A small chapter that had changed the story of my life. From that point on, I carried myself differently. I spoke with more confidence, I tried new things without hesitation, and I embraced parts of myself that had always been hidden. Some days were harder than others, especially when self-doubt crept in, but I had a reminder, a mirror, and a memory of a boy who dared to wear a wig and discovered who he truly was. The transformation wasn't sudden, it was gradual, quiet, and deeply personal. And looking back, I realized that the wig challenge at school wasn't just a silly dare, it was a moment that taught me about identity, courage, and the freedom of being seen without fear. I became the most feminine boy not because of appearances, but because I learned to accept, explore, and express myself honestly. Years later, I still remember that first day vividly: the nervous laughter, the careful steps in front of the mirror, Ava's patient guidance, and the shock of walking into school and seeing genuine admiration instead of ridicule. That day marked the beginning of a lifelong journey of self-discovery, a journey that started with a dare and led me to understand something profoundly simple yet endlessly powerful. The courage to be yourself is the most transformative thing anyone can ever experience. And so, whenever I catch a glimpse of my reflection, whether with the wig or without it, I smile. I remember the boy who dared, who learned, who transformed, not just on the outside, but inside, where it truly matters. I became more than just the most feminine boy in school. I became someone who knows that identity isn't a mask, a challenge, or a joke. It's a journey, a discovery, and the bravest form of honesty there is.